push notifications in Xampp with Sqlite and PHP. In this tutorial, I will exhibit how to program push notifications for your website. The technology used in this tutorial is a mashup of various components, but basically it is HTML, JavaScript, PHP, and Sqlite. There is a GitHub repository so you can download and review, modify, and test the code for yourself. This tutorial also uses a Xampp locally virtual hosted site called Demo Site. My previous videos exhibit how to establish this demo site. This tutorial uses Node Package Manager and Composer, so it is important to have Node Package Manager and Composer installed to your operating system. I have previous videos demonstrating how to get those technology components configured. So to begin, I would like to show what the end result of this demo is. It is very simple. In the browser, we will visit https://demosite/push, and it will display our page. The page has two buttons, one to subscribe to push notifications and another to send push notifications. To subscribe to push notifications, press the top button labeled Enable Push Messaging, and a tooltip appears asking if we want to allow DemoSite to send us push notifications. Click Allow. The button label changes to Disable Push Messaging. The next button is to send a push notification. If we click the Send Push Notification button, the notification will appear. The notification has a title, a description, an icon, and a message. The title is Push Code Lab. The description is Yay, it works. The icon is a bell, and clicking the push notification takes us to Google Code Labs, where I learned the majority of the JavaScript for this tutorial. To begin this demo, there should be a Xampp installation. Within the Xampp installation, we want to navigate to Xampp, Apache, Conf, Extra. In this folder, we are able to set up a SSL virtual hosted site. In a previous tutorial, I explained how to set up a general virtual hosted site. So if you have not done that, go back and set up that before doing this. Here in this demonstration, we want to right-click the file httpd-ssl.conf and open it in Sublime Text Editor. This file contains entry directives for Apache to register what and where our SSL virtual host sites are by definition. There is a sample entry which we will be using. Look for the opening tag of virtual host default 443. Highlight the entire entry down to the closing virtual host tag. Copy it and paste it. Now what we want to do is clean it up to make it a bit more legible. There are a ton of comment lines. The comment lines are the ones that begin with the hash sign. To clean this up, we will utilize Sublime Text 3's Find and Replace function. It can be accessed using keyboard code Ctrl-H. At the bottom of the screen, a menu appears for Find and Replace. For this instance, we want to remove all lines that begin with the hash sign, but not for the entire file. Remove all lines that begin with the hash sign just within the code we have highlighted. There are settings for this. The settings are regular expression, make sure that's enabled, and in selection, make sure that is enabled as well. Our regular expression is $## N. This reads as Include hash sign plus wildcard new line. Anything that begins with a hash sign, anything after that, and new line. Whatever matches that regular expression will be replaced. In this example, we are replacing the line with blankness. It will remove the line, ensure our entry is highlighted, and click Replace All. Then they magically disappear. Now we can define our SSL virtual host site. Change the document root to match our directory on the file system, Xampp htdocs demo site. Change the server name to demo site. Change the admin to admin@demosite. And clean up the entry so it's a bit more compact. Save the file. Next, start up Apache through the Xampp control panel to ensure it worked. We will visit the site in Chrome. There is an issue here. We have not allowed our browser to accept security certificates for our new SSL site. Right-click the Not Secure label in the address bar and a menu displays. At the bottom of the menu, click Site Settings. Go to Content Settings and find Manage Certificates and click it to open our Browser to Certificates Manager. These directions are specific to Chrome, but most browsers will have something similar as a SSL Certificates Manager. Find the tab labeled Trusted Root Certification and select it. Click the Import button and eventually we will get to the screen to import a site certificate. Navigate to Xampp, Apache, Conf, SSL.crt, and open server.crt. Server.crt is our SSL certificate. Finish it and approve. We have imported our site certificate. However, refreshing the page shows that Chrome browser just doesn't like it. This method may or may not work on other browsers, but Chrome requires a standardized certificate approved by an official certificate authority. The Chrome browser is really strict. To solve this, we need a hack. What we will do is bypass the Chrome browser's SSL certificate check. I do not recommend one to browse the web using this hack because it would make your browser less secure on the World Wide Web. This is for development and testing purposes only. Go to the Chrome browser shortcut icon on the desktop and right-click it. In the target entry, add the flag Ignore Certificate Errors. And apply, click OK. Now if we open the Chrome browser using this icon, we can visit the site https demo site and it will not block our ability to browse it. Back in our local directory, Xampp htdocs demo site, we will create a folder for our push notification demo. Create a folder named push. In this folder, create a text file named index.php. And open it in Sublime Text Editor. Here, I'm going to set up some basic configuration variables. This is my own personal practice. This makes my own PHP easier having these variables. It is a snippet called docroot and will be included in the GitHub repository. This snippet was created in a previous video about Sublime Text Editor. Next, we will instantiate our Sqlite database. The database is where we would hold the information regarding the users who have registered to allow notifications to be sent to them. There will be the database file, db.sqlite, and in our database will be a table called subscribers. If someone wants to receive notifications from our website, they will be registered in our subscribers table in our database. If someone does not want to receive notifications from our website, they will not be registered in our database. For simplicity's sake, in this demonstration, we will only be having one registered row within our subscribers table in our database. You can modify the code on your own to change this. Our Sqlite database will be a file named db.sqlite. We will create the database using PHP for efficiency purposes. The PHP to instantiate our database will be written here into our index.php file. Right now, we do not have a db SQLite file. The first time anyone ever visits our site, there will be no db SQLite file which contains our database. The first time the first user visits the page, the database file is created, the subscribers table definitions are declared and applied, and thus the subscribers table will be created on the database file. In all subsequent visits, the database file already exists, the code which defines the subscribers table with the code which applies the table's declaration will be skipped. With no subscribers, the subscribers table is empty. When someone subscribes to receive notifications, they will be added to the subscribers table in our db.sqlite database. To begin, a Boolean variable isDB is defined as false. If the db SQLite file already exists, then our variable isDB is set to true. We will then open a connection to our db SQLite database using PHP PDO and store this connection in a variable db. If for some reason a connection cannot be established, exit with an error. PDO and SQLite is rather tricky in that it does two things. 1. If the db SQLite file already exists, it opens the database and establishes the connection. If the db SQLite file does not exist, it creates the db SQLite file and establishes the connection. If isDB equals false, then we can declare our subscription table and apply it to our newly created empty db SQLite database. I have my own way of declaring database tables and applying them. This is it. First, create an array called tables. Make each array item in the table's array a table of our intended database. Here we only have one table called subscribers. The subscribers table will store a set of data. The data stored in the subscribers table is organized into columns, with each column being one piece of necessary data. The columns in our subscribers table are defined in an array of its own. An ID for a unique index, an endpoint which each browser assigns as its own unique identifier, an auth which is an authorization key, and P256DH, which is another key which I'm guessing stands for Push 256 Diffie Hellman. an encryption method. Parse the tables array using a for each loop and parse the array values to compile up an SQL query beginning with create table if not exists. The SQL query will be the command to create our subscribers table. This could be done by direct SQL query declaration, but such is not my practice. When an SQL database definition gets large, this is more efficient. This SQL query is rather short, but my practice remains solid and it works. Then execute the query on our DB connection. This creates a subscribers table and its columns. Word wrap to make Sublime text more cleaner. Next, if we visit the push demonstration page in our browser, we will be presented with a blank page. However, in the background, DB SQLite database file was created. There it is. We still cannot view or edit the DB SQLite file. To do that, we would need a special program. There are several ways to administrate our SQLite database, but I have chosen one of the simpler and easier ones, SQLite admin. Within Google search SQLite admin. It will take you to a download page. Download the file. In our downloads folder is a zip file for the SQLite admin. Extract this zip file to our htdocs folder. Navigate to the htdocs SQLite admin folder and find the SQLite admin executable file. Right-click it and choose Pin to Taskbar. This makes our SQLite admin easier to open when needed. Now, if we navigate back to our push folder and try to open our DB SQLite file, it gives us an option of which program to use. Use the SQLite admin executable file we just extracted. The SQLite admin program will open and we can see our database with the subscribers table. Click the Edit Data tab and click the subscribers table, and here we can see an empty table definition with the column we defined, ID, endpoint, auth, P256DH. Close it. Go to the command prompt. Now we will add some components that are needed with any code we will write for our push notification demo. Just to avoid any potential authentication issues, I run the command prompt as administrator. Using Node Package Manager, we install the web push by using the command npm install g web push. This package will generate keys we utilize for our demo, a public key and a private key. After it has installed, to generate these keys, use the command web push generate vapid keys, which will generate the keys we need. We need to save these keys for use in our push notification demo. In Windows 8 command line, we must right-click the title bar of the command line window, choose Edit, choose Mark. This allows us to highlight the command line text. Highlight the command line text containing our two keys. Right-click the command line title again and choose Edit. Choose Copy. Then paste it into a text file. Here we have a file named keys.txt open in Sublime Text Editor, which we are pasting into. Save it. Back in the command prompt, navigate to our push demo directory by using the command chdir c xampp htdocs demo site push. chdir stands for change directory. Before we can install the next component, we need to modify our PHP environment variables. To modify the PHP environment variables, we must edit a file called php.ini. php.ini is located in C Xampp php php.ini. Navigate to that folder and open php.ini in Sublime Text Editor. The modifications we need are to enable a few things which are commented out by default. Find, by pressing Ctrl F, php_gmp, and uncomment the line extension equals php_gmp.dll. Now find func_ and uncomment the line mbstring.funcoverload equals 0. I will include a copy of the php.ini file in the GitHub repository for you to compare your current file to what is needed. Working with php.ini is kind of tricky. A good program to compare two files is called WinMerge. It's highly recommended for comparing and modifying two files and folders. Save php.ini and restart Xampp to ensure the changes are implemented. Go back to the command prompt. Here we will install the PHP component necessary for this demo using Composer. Type the command composer require /webpush, and it will install the necessary files to the demo site /push directory. If there are any errors here, it is probably due to a misconfiguration in the php.ini file. Please research what you have versus what you need to get it working. Go back to index.php. Next we will define two PHP variables, one for each of our two keys. Normally we would want to keep the private key private by declaring it in a remote file in the database, encrypted, but here we're just going to hard-code it in for simplicity's sake. Then we will add the HTML boilerplate document code using Emmet snippets. The Emmet snippets is a Sublime Text package installed in a previous video about Sublime Text. Type an exclamation point and press Tab. The default HTML document snippet will be applied to our document. Name it Push Notification Example for the title. Then we bring our public key into a JavaScript variable. ASP key equals PHP echo public key. Next, we will add our two buttons. One button is to subscribe and unsubscribe to notifications, push toggle button. Initially, it is disabled. The other button is to send a push notification, send push button. Here we will also include our main.js file, which contains most of the JavaScript push notification application code and logic. It will be in the folder Scripts. So the next task is to navigate to our push directory in demo site and create the Scripts folder. Inside that, create the main.js file. Open main.js and Sublime Text Editor. This code should be executed in strict mode. If we have no ASP key, then throw an error. Define a constant variable, application server public key, and set it to use our public key. Define a constant variable, push button, and assign it to correspond to our push toggle button. Define a Boolean variable, isSubscribed, and assign its initial state to false. This variable keeps track of the current browser's subscription status. Define a variable to hold our service worker registration object. Initially, it is null. This function is a utility function. Earl B64 to uint8 array. This function converts data from one format to another. The public key is actually a base64 encoded data variable. Base64 is a type of encryption. We convert it to a uint8 array, which is an array of 8-bit integers. The only explanation I feel is necessary to give regarding this is that computer programming is really fun. I found this code somewhere on the web and modified it to work towards my needs. I'm just dropping it in here. Application logic is my thing more than encryption. Next, we want to test if the current browser supports service workers and push notifications, and if so, registers our service worker as in the mysw.js file. This code tests browser support. If the browser supports service worker and push notifications, we log out to console and register the service worker. The service worker definition is in the file named mysw.js. Mysw.js returns a promise. This promise is our service worker object. Our service worker object is what stores the push notification data in the client's browser, which here is Google Chrome. Even when offline, or when the browser is closed, or when the browser is not visiting our website, the service worker and its data exists. If a website administrator sends a push notification to the registered service worker, it will be received by the service worker and display the notification in the user's operating system accordingly. If and when the service worker is registered and the promise object is returned, we assign the object to the SW registration variable. We also call a function to initialize UI, the user interface. The user interface will be modified to correspond to the status of the service worker object. If there is an error, we will catch the error and log it out to console. If push notifications are not supported, we will log a console error to the browser. In the main push directory, we will create the service worker file, mysw.js. This file will contain the application logic for our service worker object. This service worker object will be a basic push notification component. Create a new file, mysw.js, and open it in Sublime Text Editor. As stated in the video description, a lot of this client-side code was from a Google Codelabs lesson. The Google Codelabs lesson was for JavaScript only. This has been modified for PHP. We will enable strict mode. We will define an event listener for any push events. The service worker exists to listen and receive a push notification and respond to it. If the service worker receives a push event, it will respond with this action set. First, it will log out to the server that it has received a push event and log the data to the server. Then we can define our push notification itself. Keeping it simple, we have a title, push code lab, a set of optional data, the body, yay, it works, the icon, a bell PNG image, the badge, a badge PNG image. The service worker just waits until it has a notification promise, which is pretty much immediately if we are in this block, but computers think in milliseconds. And when the service worker has a notification promise, it executes a notification function using our title and options. Then we will add an event listener for when the notification is clicked. If the notification is clicked, we will log a message to the console and tell the notification to close. But the event will trigger a browser window to open a Google Codelabs page. The event will wait until the Google Codelabs page is open before it closes. Save the service worker file mysw.js and return to editing main.js. We will define our function to initialize the user interface. The user interface is basically two buttons, push toggle button and send push button. Push button will get an event listener. This event listener listens for a click. If the user clicks the push toggle button, it enables and disables the push subscription itself, based on the current state of the push subscription. While processing is happening, it's best to disable the push toggle button. If the user is subscribed, call the function unsubscribe user, or else, if the user is not subscribed, call the function subscribe user. Then we set the initial subscription value based on our service worker registration object. This is done using a built-in function, pushManager getSubscription. GetSubscription returns a promise. When we receive that promise, we receive the current status of the current subscription. We set our variable isSubscribed to true or false based on the subscription status. If we are subscribed, log out to the console that the user is subscribed. If we are not subscribed, log out to the console that the user is not subscribed. Then call a function to set the push toggle button state called updateButton. Let's define the JavaScript function to subscribe a user. This function is called when a user presses the push toggle button to subscribe to push notifications. First, we define a variable constant application server key using the base 64 to 8-bit array function and our application server public key. Next, we tell our service worker pushManager to subscribe with this data. User visible only is needed to make the notification visible. The application server key keeps this client browser unique to all other client browsers. This subscribe event returns a promise. When we receive the promise, we log out to console that the user is subscribed and call a function to update the subscription on the server. We also set our isSubscribed variable to true. Then update the push toggle button to correspond to this status of being subscribed, the updateButton function. If there was an error, we will log that error out to the console and update the push toggle button. Let's define our function to update the toggle button. If our notification permission is denied, this means that the user refused to allow push notifications. Disable the push toggle button. Change the label on the push toggle button to express that push notifications are blocked. Return from the function. If the user is subscribed, then leave the push toggle button enabled. Its label should convey that a click would disable push messaging. The next time the user presses the push toggle button, it would unsubscribe, thus changing from its current state of being subscribed. Or, if currently the user is not subscribed, then leave the push toggle button enabled. Its label should convey that a click would enable push messaging. The next time the user presses the push toggle button, it would subscribe, thus changing from its current state of being unsubscribed. Set the state of the push toggle button itself to be enabled by setting the button's disabled attribute to false. Now, let's define our function to update the subscription on the server. This function accepts the current subscription object and sends its attributes to the index.php file in a post data set. The index.php file uses this to create a subscription and add the subscription to our DB Sqlite database. First, it tests if our subscription is not null. If we have a valid subscription, it proceeds. We define a constant variable for the key using the subscription.getKey function and the subscription's P256DH data. We define a constant variable for the token using the subscription.getKey function and the subscription's auth data. Then we implement a fetch which will send post data to the index.php in the JSON format. JSON is JavaScript object notation. The body of the post is the data. We use the JavaScript function json.stringify to create a JSON object consisting of our subscription endpoint. This is created by the browser to make a unique address for the client browser. The key is defined using a ternary conditional. It creates a base 64 using BTOA and the 8-bit array with subscription.getKey. The same is done for the token. A final piece of data is the action, which is set to subscribe. This fetch will return a response. We will log the response to the server. This response will convey to us whether the subscription was a success or not and why. If the fetch fails, then log the error to the console. If the subscription itself overall is null, then none of all that code runs. We will just log an error to the console instead. Now we define our function to unsubscribe a user. To unsubscribe a user, we will use much of the same code we use to update subscription on server. First, we retrieve the subscription object using the service worker registration.getSubscription method. This returns a promise, and that promise is an object that is our subscription. With this subscription object, we define a constant for the key and a constant for the token. We will implement a fetch which will send post data to index.php in the JSON format. The body of the post is what will be received by index.php. The body includes the subscription endpoint, the subscription key, and the subscription token. The body dataset also has a variable for the action, which is set to unsubscribe. When this fetch returns, we will log the response out to the console, which will convey to us whether the subscription modification was a success or not, and why. If the fetch fails, then log the error to the console. We return from the function by unsubscribing to the subscription by calling its unsubscribe method. If there is an error getting the service worker registration subscription, we will catch that error and log that out to the console. If not, then proceed by updating the subscription on the server with null, which this probably does nothing, and logging out to the console that the user is unsubscribed. Set our isSubscribed variable to false. Then update the push toggle button. Now let's work on the component that sends the push notification itself. We define a JavaScript variable to correspond to our send push button in the markup. Then we can create an event listener for when the send push button is clicked. When the send push button is clicked, we check to see if the service worker is ready. If it is ready, then we will have a promise returned to us. In this promise, we will call the service worker.getSubscription method, which also returns its own promise, the subscription object. If the subscription object is false, we will alert the user to enable push notifications, or else we will implement a fetch to a file, sendPushNotification.php. In the post data for this fetch, we will send some data from the current subscription. We will send the subscription endpoint, the subscription key, and the subscription token. The send push notification PHP file matches up this current endpoint and uses the Composer web push library to trigger our service worker to show the notification. In a real-world usage, we would make this have our dynamic data and use that dynamic data to modify our notification to be pushed. Once this fetch connects to send push notification PHP, then our push event is triggered and our service worker would receive it. What we want to do now is finish up the PHP in the index file. We still need to handle the post data being sent from main.js to index.php. There must be handlers for our subscribe action and our unsubscribe action. So, inside of index.php, underneath our key declarations in PHP, before our HTML markup, we will catch these post data variables. If post action is set, then we will execute a code block. In this code block, we will have a variable to output. The post action variable can have two definitions, so we will create a switch statement to catch each possible definition. One case for when our action is to subscribe, one case for when our action is to unsubscribe. All switch statements have a default. This default will do nothing, and exit because we don't need to display any markup in this case. Within our subscribe code block, in the real world, we would want to filter out any bad data for security purposes. For this demonstration, we will skip that. What we will do is query for our database's subscribers table for any row entry which matches the endpoint sent in with our post data. This post endpoint data was sent from the mymain.js file within the function called update subscription on server amongst its fetch implementation. If we do not have a result, then we will create and execute a query to add this user subscription to the subscribers table. Echo out the query for debugging purposes. However, do not do this in any real live application usage. Then execute the query. If the user is added, we will convey this in the output variable. If the user already exists, then we don't need to add the user. We will just output that the user already exists. Next, we can write up our code block for unsubscribing a user. First, we will write and execute a query to select from the subscribers table any entry that has the same endpoint that was sent in with our post data. This post endpoint data was sent from the myMain.js file within the unsubscribe function amongst its fetch implementation. If we do have a match, then create and execute a query to delete that particular entry, thus removing the entry from our subscriptions. If there is no match, then do nothing. In order for PHP to properly process the posted JSON data, a little extra is needed. The JSON data, which is sent from myMain.js, is received by the server as a JSON file. The JSON file has a reference of php//input, which we must receive and decode. This line of code catches the JSON file and makes it viable for use as post data using a function called JSON decode. We assign the decoded JSON to our post variable for usage in PHP. This is different for PHP 7 than it is in PHP 5. We can save the index.php and move on to creating our new file, sendPostNotification.php, in our push directory. This file selects the user from the database and triggers the service worker to send the push notification. This file uses the Composer Web Push component. Open the file in Sublime Text Editor. Before we edit this file, though, it is necessary to tie up a few possible loose ends which would give an application error. First, make sure we have our images folder within the push folder and that the images folder has the necessary image files, badge PNG and icon PNG. Then we want to ensure our operating system time is correct by going into PC settings, time and language, date and time. Then turn on the option to set time automatically. If the system time doesn't match with the time on the internet browser, the notifications will fail. Now we can edit the file sendPushNotificationsPHP in Sublime Text Editor. First, require Composer and use /link web push. Next, we will establish a connection to our DB SQLite database. Then we will query the database for the first entry. Since this is a demo, there should be one and only subscriber, which is our own browser. If the result is null, the execution will fail and exit. If we do get a result, this result is stored in a variable called subscriber. We then declare an array named auth, which contains our push notification vapid keys. Normally, on a real-world live server, this would be kept private or encrypted, but for this demo purpose, we will just hardcode with directly in there by copying and pasting from our keys.txt file. Define the public key and then define the private key. Now we can create a new web push object using the auth variable. This web push object has a function that triggers our service worker called sendNotification. SendNotification takes a few arguments: the endpoint, some text data, the P256DH variable, slightly modified from JS to work in PHP, and the subscriber auth variable, slightly modified from JS to work with PHP, and a final variable set to true. Optionally, if you want to debug, we can do a var dump on the res variable to check any errors. The var dump is unnecessary though. That completes all the coding. Save all the files and open the browser from the icon on the desktop. Go to https demo site push to see what we have. Initially, our DB SQLite database subscribers table should be empty. In the browser, press the push toggle button to enable push notifications. Click the tooltip allow button to allow this client browser to accept push notifications. This will register us in the database. Review the database in SQLite admin by clicking on the subscribers table again to refresh the output on the screen. It should show our data has been added as an entry row. Go back to the browser and press the Send Push button to send a push notification. As shown here, in the bottom left corner of the screen, the push notification displays. If we click on the notification, it opens a browser tab connecting to the Google developer's website. If we press F12 in the browser will display the developer's tools. There is a selection in the menu labeled Application. Here we can inspect and modify our application components. It is possible to manually send a push notification by pressing Push. Here I will demonstrate how to reset all data to empty just in case we want to try again. First, select Clear Storage in the right menu, and click the button to clear site data in the right side table cell. This will clear the client-side data in our browser. Close the developer's tools, and click the main browser menu to open the browser history. In the browser history, remove Demo Site from the entire browser history. Close SQLite admin and delete DB SQLite from our push directory in the demo site folder. Back in the browser, right-click the text Not Secure in the address bar to access the site settings. Click Site Settings. Locate the menu option for notifications and click the right arrow. Find Demo Site in the list of sites we have notification settings for and remove it from the list. Now we can refresh the push index web page and we have restarted with a clean configuration. If we click the push toggle button, the tooltip will appear asking us to allow push notifications. If we allow it and send a push notification, it works just as before. Thanks for watching.